This is Radio 3.
I, an autobiographical play by David Osman, based on the writings of E. Cummings.
When God decided to invent everything, he took one breath, bigger than a circus tent, and everything began. When man determined to destroy himself, he picked the was of shell, and finding only why, smashed it into because.
Edward Eston Cummings was born on the 14th of October, 1894. In this program, he is played by Don Fellows.
Writing, I feel, is an art. And artists, I feel, are human beings. As a human being stands, so a human being is. You see, it's you, nobody else, who determine your destiny and decide your fate. Nobody else can be alive for you, nor can you be alive for anybody else.
Toms can be Dicks.
And Dicks can be Harrys.
But none of them can ever be you. There's the artist's responsibility, and the most awful responsibility on earth. If you can take it and be. If you can't, cheer up and go about other people's business, and do or undo till you drop.
Mr. Cummings, I was...
Yes.
Sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Cummings,
Yeah.
can you tell us who you are?
There I perceive a serious autobiographical problem.
As well as an excellent chance to learn something.
There'd be no problem, of course, if I subscribed to the hyper-scientific doctrine that heredity is nothing because everything is environment.
I don't,
Well, by denying the past, which I respect, it negates the future. And I love the future.
So, what's the problem?
Two problems.
Two
no.
problems?
United by a certain wholly mysterious moment which signifies self-discovery. Now, until this mysterious moment, I am only incidentally a writer. Primarily, I am the son of my parents, and whatever is happening to him. After this moment, the question
Who are you?
is answered by what I write. In other words, I become my writing, and my autobiography becomes the exploration of my stance as a writer.
So, how do you solve the first problem?
I must create a long-lost personage.
Who?
Oh, you mean...
My parent's son and his vanished world.
Working man with hands so hairy sturdy, you may turn, oh turn that airy, hurdy, sturdy, gurdy. But when we'll turn backward, oh backward time, in your, know thy flight, and make me a child, a pretty dribbling child, a little child.
Now take the matter of being born. What does being born mean to most people?
Catastrophe Unlimited?
Social revolution?
The cultured aristocrat yanked out of his hyper-exclusively ultra-voluptuous super palazzo and dumped into an incredibly vulgar detention camp, swarming with every conceivable species of undesirable organism. Now, if most people were to be born twice, they'd improbably call it dying.
All right, Mr. Cummings. Tell us, where were you born?
I was born at home.
The 104 Irving Street, Cambridge, Massachusetts. It says right here.
I know, stupid.
My home faced the Cambridge world as a finely and solidly constructed mansion, preceded by a large oval lawn and ringed with an imposing white pine hedge. Just in front of the house itself stood two huge apple trees, and faithfully every spring, these giants lifted their whirls of fragrance toward the room where I breathed and dreamed.
In just spring, when the world is mud, luscious, the little lame balloon man whistles far and wee. And Eddie and Bill come running from marbles and piracies, and it's spring.
When the world is puddle wonderful.
The queer old balloon man man whistles far and wee. And Betty and Isabel come dancing from hopscotch and jump rope, and it's spring. And the goat-footed balloon man whistles far and wee.
Our nearest neighbor, dwelling at a decent distance behind us, was Roland Thaxter, primarily the father of my loveliest playmate and ultimately the professor of cryptogamic botany.
Whatever that is.
Plants with spores.
Only a butterfly's glide from my home began a mythical domain of semi-wilderness, separating cerebral Cambridge and orchidaceous Somerville. Deep in this magical realm of between stood a palace containing Harvard University's far-famed Charles Eliot Norton, and lowly folk had nicknamed the district Norton's Woods. Here, as a very little child, I first encountered that mystery who is nature. Here, my enormous smallness entered her illimitable being. And here, someone actually infinite or impossibly alive, someone who might almost, but not quite, have been myself, wonderingly wandered the mortally immortal complexities of her, beyond imagining imagination.
The hours rise up, putting off stars, and it is dawn. Into the street of the sky, light walks, scattering poems. On earth, a candle is extinguished. The city wakes with a song upon her mouth, having death in her eyes.
And it is dawn. The world goes forth to murder dreams.
I see in the street where strong men are digging bread, and I see the brutal faces of people, contented, hideous, hopeless, cruel, happy.
And it is day.
In the mirror, I see a frail man dreaming dreams. Dreams in the mirror.
And it is dusk on earth. A candle is lighted, and it is dark. The people are in their houses. The frail man is in his bed. The city sleeps with death upon her mouth, having a song in her eyes.
The hours descend, putting on stars. In the street of the sky, night walks, scattering poems.
That mystery who is nature.
I thank you, God, for most this amazing day, for the leaping greenly spirits of trees and a blue true dream of sky, and for everything which is natural, which is infinite, which is yes. I who have died am alive again today, and this is the sun's birthday. This is the birthday of life and of love and wings, and of the gay, great, happening, illimitably earth. How should tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, breathing, any, lifted from the know of all nothing, human nearly being, doubt unimaginable you? Now the ears of my ears awake, and now the eyes of my eyes are opened.
It was my miraculous fortune to have a true father and a true mother, and a home which the truth of their love made joyous.
Tell us about your father.
My father was a New Hampshire man, 6'2", a crack shot and a famous fly fisherman, and a first-rate sailor and a woodsman who could find his way through forest primeval without a compass, and a canoeist who'd still paddle you up to a deer without ruffling the surface of a pond, and an ornithologist and taxidermist, and when he gave up hunting, an expert photographer, the best I've ever seen, and an actor who portrayed Julius Caesar in Sanders Theater.
Wow.
And a painter, both in oils and watercolors, and a better carpenter than any professional, and an architect who designed his own houses before building them, and when he liked a plumber who, just for the fun of it, installed all his own waterworks. And while at Harvard, a teacher with small use for professors. And later,
At Dr. Hale's so-called South Congregational Really Unitarian Church.
a preacher who horribly shocked his pew holders by crying,
The kingdom of heaven is no spiritual roof garden. It's inside you.
yes,
Very
yes.
good.
And my father had the first telephone in Cambridge, and long before any Model T Ford, he piloted an Orient buckboard with friction drive, produced by the Waltham Watch Company. And my father sent me to a certain public school because its principal was a gentle, immense coal-black negress. And when he became a diplomat for world peace, he gave me and my friends a tremendous party up in a tree.
Oh, far out.
My father was a servant of the people who fought Boston's biggest and crookedest politician all day, and a few evenings later sat down with him cheerfully at the Rotary Club. And my father's voice was so magnificent that he was called on to impersonate God speaking from Beacon Hill.
Wow.
He was heard all over the common. And my father gave me Plato's metaphor of the cave with my mother's milk. My father moved through dooms of love, through sames of am, through halves of give, singing each morning out of each night. My father moved through depths of height.
Tell us about your mother.
I shall not attempt a description of my mother, but let me try to give you a few glimpses of the most amazing person I've ever met. She came of highly respectable Roxbury stock. She assured me that she grew up a shy, or as we now say, neurotic girl who had to be plucked from under sofas whenever friends came to call. And this statement I found almost unbelievable, though she could no more have told a lie than flown over the housetop. For never have I encountered anyone more joyous, anyone healthier in body and mind, anyone so quite incapable of remembering a wrong, or anyone so completely and humanly and unaffectedly generous.
Love is a place, and through this place of love move with brightness of peace all places. Yes is a world, and in this world of yes live skillfully curled all worlds.
Reaching outward from this love and this joy, I was marvelously lucky to touch and seize a rising and striving world, a reckless world filled with the curiosity of life herself, a vivid and violent world welcoming every challenge, a world worth hating and adoring and fighting and forgiving. In brief, a world which was a world.
Here, listen to this. En route to a university whose name begins with H, our Anhero attended 4 Cambridge schools. The first, private, where everybody was extraordinarily kind, and where...
In addition to learning...
Nothing. He burst into tears and nosebleeds.
Oh, go on.
The other 3 schools were public.
Where he flourished like the wicked and learned what the wicked learn.
And where almost nobody cared about somebody else.
As regards my self-finding, I have to thank, first of all, that institution whose initial I flaunted unknowingly during my very earliest days. Officially, Harvard presented me with a smattering of languages and sciences, with a glimpse of Homer, a more than glimpse of Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, and Aristophanes, and a deep glance at Dante and Shakespeare.
Mister, yous needn't be so spry concerning questions arty.
Each has his taste, but as for I likes a certain party.
Gimme the He-Man's solid bliss. For yous ideas, I'll match yous. A pretty girl who naked is worth 1,000,000 statues.
Unofficially, Harvard gave me my first taste of independence and the truest friends any man will ever enjoy.
Oh, sure.
The taste of independence came during my senior year when I was so lucky as to receive a room by myself in the yard. Hitherto, I had ostensibly lived at home, which meant that intimate contacts with the surrounding world were somewhat periculous. Now I could roam that surrounding world sans peur, if not sans reproche, and I lost no time in doing so.
The Cambridge ladies, who live in furnished souls, are unbeautiful and have comfortable minds.
Also, with the church's Protestant blessings, daughters, unscented, shapeless, spirited. They believe in Christ and Longfellow, both dead.
Are invariably interested in so many things.
At the present writing, one still finds delighted fingers knitting for the, is it pole?
Perhaps.
Perhaps. While permanent faces coyly bandy scandal of Mrs. N and Professor D.
The Cambridge ladies do not care, above Cambridge, if sometimes, in its box of sky, lavender and cornerless, the moon rattles like a fragment of angry candy.
Raise the shade, will you, dearie? Rain. Wouldn't that get your goat? But we don't care, do we, dearie? We should worry about the rain, huh, dearie? You know, I'm sorry for all the poor girls that gets up, God knows when, every day of their lives. Ain't you? Oh, dearie, not so hard, dear. You're killing me.
After Harvard?
A phenomenon, a telemicroscopic chimera, born of the satanic rape of matter by mind, a phallic female phantasm, clothed in thunderous anonymity and adorned with colossally floating spiderwebs of traffic, a stark, irresistibly stupendous newness, mercifully harboring among its pitilessly premeditated spontaneities immemorial races and nations.
He means New York City.
Where I breathed, and as if for the first time.
Into the strenuous briefness. Life!
Hand organs and April darkness. Friends.
I charge laughing into the hair-thin tints of yellow dawn, into the woman-colored twilight I smilingly glide. I into the big vermilion departure swim, sayingly,
Do you think
the
I do.
world is probably made of roses and hello?
of so longs and ashes?
Where I breathed and as if for the first time.
But the truly first of the first times was, however, still to come.
It arrived with a so-called war.
Being neither warrior nor conscientious objector, saint nor hero, I embarked for France as an ambulance driver.
Look at this. A 75 done this. Nobody would have believed, would they? No kidding. This was my particular pal. Funny, ain't it? We was buddies. I used to know him. Lift the poor cuss tenderly. This side up. Handle with care. Fragile. And send him home to his old mother in a new, nice pine box. Collect.
First jock, he was killed. A handsome man, and James and next, let me see. Yes, Will, that was cleverest. He was killed, and my youngest boy was killed. Last, with the big eyes I loved like you can't imagine. Harry was, oh, God killed. He was killed. Everybody was killed. They called them the Kilties.
Late in 1917, a soiled envelope with a French stamp on it arrived at 104 Irving Street, Cambridge. It contained a carefully phrased scrawl. Edward Estlin Cummings had been interned in a certain concentration camp with a fine friend named Brown. Lost by the ambulance corps, he was officially dead as a result of official misinformation. He was entombed by the French government.
Well, now, who was eligible for imprisonment in the enormous room? Anyone whom the police could find in the lovely country of France.
A, who was not guilty of treason.
B, who could not prove that he was not guilty of treason.
By treason, I refer to any little annoying habits of independent thought or action, which, en temps de guerre, are put in a hole and covered over, with the somewhat naive idea that from their cadavers violets will grow, whereof the perfume will delight all good men and true, and make such worthy citizens forget their sorrows.
His father, the Reverend Edward Cummings, wrote a letter.
2.
President Woodrow Wilson, White House, Washington, D.C., December 8th, 1917. Mr. President, it seems criminal to ask for a single moment of your time, but I am strongly advised that it would be more criminal to delay any longer calling to your attention a crime against American citizenship in which the French government has persisted for many weeks, in spite of constant appeals made to the American minister at Paris, and in spite of subsequent action taken by the State Department at Washington. The victims are 2 American ambulance drivers, Edward Estlin Cummings of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and William Slater Brown.
Yes, monsieur. I met Brown on the paquebot.
You and your friend were together in Paris?
Yes.
How long?
A month. While we were waiting for our uniforms.
And what did you do in Paris?
We had a good time.
Little ladies more than dead exactly dance in my head, precisely dance where danced la guerre.
You are aware that your friend has written to friends in America and to his family very bad letters?
I am not.
Est-ce que vous détestez les Boches?
No. J'aime beaucoup les Français.
It is impossible to love Frenchmen and not to hate Germans. You are doubtless aware of the atrocities committed by the Boche?
I've read about them.
And if they are so, which of course they are, you do not detest the Germans?
In that case, of course. Anyone must detest them.
I am sorry for you, but due to your friend, you will be detained a little while.
Several weeks?
Possible.
Wrote my father.
Pardon me, but if I were president, and your son were suffering such prolonged injustice at the hands of France, and your son's mother had been needlessly kept in hell as many weeks as my boy's mother has, I would do something to make American citizenship as sacred in the eyes of Frenchmen as Roman citizenship was in the eyes of the ancient world.
This letter was received at the White House. Whether it was received with sympathy or with silent disapproval is still a mystery. Many days passed. Suddenly the telephone rang. Top brass demanding Reverend Edward Cummings.
Hello?
My father said.
This is Major So-and-so. And that friend of your son is no damn good. He may even be a spy. Unpatriotic, anyhow. Deserves what's coming to him. You understand?
I understand.
Said my deeply patriotic father.
Well, we won't touch Brown, so it's your son or nothing. And I guarantee that your son alone will be out of that hellhole in 5 days. Now, what do you say about that?
I say,
Replied my father,
don't bother.
and he hung up.
Incidentally, the Major did bother. Cummings and Brown were released alive.
Humanity, I love you, because you would rather black the boots of success than inquire whose soul dangles from his watch chain, which would be embarrassing for both parties, and because you unflinchingly applaud all songs containing the words country, home, and mother when sung at the old Howard.
Humanity, I love you because when you're hard up, you pawn your intelligence to buy a drink, and when you're flush, pride keeps you from the pawn shop, and because you are continually committing nuisances, but more especially in your own house.
Humanity, I love you, because you are perpetually putting the secret of life in your pants and forgetting it's there and sitting down on it, and because you are forever making poems in the lap of death. Humanity, I hate you.
Which brings us to a question. Could you tell us ordinary lowbrows something about your possibly individualistic poetic technique?
My theory of technique, if I have one, is very far from original, nor is it complicated. I can express it in 15 words by demonstrating the eternal question and immortal answer of burlesque. These.
Would you hit a woman with a child?
No, I'd hit her with a brick.
Like the burlesque comedian, I am abnormally fond of that precision which creates movement.
Slightly before the middle of Congressman Pudd's 4th of July oration, with a curse and a frown, Amy Lowell got up and all the little school children sat down.
Next to, of course, God. America, I love you, land of the pilgrims and so forth. Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early, my country 'tis of centuries come and go and are no more. What of it? We should worry. In every language, even deaf and dumb, thy sons acclaim your glorious name. By gory, by jingo, by gee, by gosh, by gum. Why talk of beauty? What could be more beautiful than these heroic, happy dead who rushed like lions to the roaring slaughter? They did not stop to think. They died instead. Then shall the voices of liberty be mute? He spoke and drank rapidly a glass of water.
Take it from me, kiddo. Believe me, my country, 'tis of you, land of the Cluid shirt, Boston garter, and spearmint girl with the wrinkly eyes, of you, land of the arrow-eyed and Earl and Wilson collars, of you I sing, land of Abraham Lincoln and Lydia E. Pinkham, land above all of just add hot water and serve from every BVD. Let freedom ring.
Amen.
If a poet is anybody, he is somebody to whom things made matter very little, somebody who is obsessed by making. Like all obsessions, the making obsession has disadvantages.
For instance?
Well, my only interest in making money would be to make it. Fortunately, however, I should prefer to make almost anything else, including locomotives and roses. It is with roses and locomotives that my poems are competing.
Not to mention acrobats.
Spring.
Electricity.
Coney Island.
The 4th of July.
The eyes of mice.
And Niagara Falls.
They are also competing with each other.
With elephants.
And with El Greco. Ineluctable preoccupation with the verb gives a poet one priceless advantage, whereas non-makers must content themselves with the merely undeniable fact that 2 times 2 is 4. He rejoices in a purely irresistible truth.
Don't tell me, I know. It's...
It's 5. Scorning the pomp of must and shall, my father moved through dooms of field,
His anger was as right as rain. His pity was as green as grain.
It isn't often you meet a true heroine.
I have the honor to be a true heroine's son. My father and mother were coming up from Cambridge to New Hampshire one day in their newly purchased automobile, an air-cooled Franklin with an ash frame. As they neared the Ossipes, snow fell. My mother was driving and, left to herself, would never have paused for such a trifle as snow. But as the snow increased, my father made her stop while he got out and wiped the windshield. Then he got in and she drove on. Some minutes later, a locomotive cut the car in half, killing my father instantly. When two brakemen jumped from the halted train, they saw a woman standing, dazed but erect, beside a mangled machine, with blood spouting, as the older said to me, out of her head. One of her hands, the younger added, kept feeling of her dress as if trying to discover why it was wet. These men took my 66-year-old mother by the arms and tried to lead her toward a nearby farmhouse, but she threw them off, strode straight to my father's body, and directed a group of scared spectators to cover him. When this had been done, and only then, she let them lead her away. A day later, my sister and I entered a small, darkened room in a country hospital. She was still alive. Why, the head doctor couldn't imagine. She wanted only one thing: to join the person she loved most. He was very near her, but she could not quite reach him. We spoke, and she recognized our voices. Gradually, her own voice began to understand what its death would mean to these living children of hers, and very gradually, a miracle happened. She decided to live. If there are any heavens, my mother will, all by herself, have one. It will not be a pansy heaven or a fragile heaven of lilies of the valley, but it will be a heaven of black-red roses. My father will be deep like a rose, tall like a rose, standing near swaying over her, silent, with eyes which are really petals and see nothing, with the face of a poet, really which is a flower and not a face, with hands which whisper, "This is my beloved, my..." Suddenly, in sunlight, he will bow, and the whole garden will bow.
What do you call yourself? Painter? Poet? Playwright?
No.
Satirist? No. Essayist? Novelist?
Artist.
But not a successful artist in the popular sense.
Don't be silly.
Yet you probably consider your art of vital consequence.
Improbably.
To the world.
To myself.
What about the world, Mr. Cummings?
Well, I live in so many. Which one do you mean?
I mean the everyday, humdrum world, which includes me and you and millions upon millions of men and women.
So?
Did it ever occur to you that people in this so-called world of ours are not interested in art?
Da.
Isn't that too bad?
How?
If people were interested in art, you as an artist would receive wider recognition.
Wider?
Of course.
Not, deeper.
Deeper?
No. Love, for example, is, deeper than flattery.
Ah, but now that you mention it, isn't love just a trifle old-fashioned?
Oh, I dare say.
And aren't you supposed to be ultra-modernistic?
I dare say.
But I dare say you don't dare say precisely why you consider your art of vital consequence.
Well, thanks to I dare say, my art, I am able to become myself.
Doesn't that sound as if people who weren't artists couldn't become themselves?
Does it?
What do you think happens to people who aren't artists? What do you think people who aren't artists become?
I feel they don't become. I feel nothing happens to them. I feel negation becomes of them.
Negation?
Yeah, you paraphrased it a few moments ago.
How?
This so-called world of ours.
Laboring under the delusion that economic forces don't exist, eh?
I am laboring.
Answer one question. Do economic forces exist or do they not?
Do you believe in ghosts?
I said economic forces.
So what?
Well. Where ignorance is bliss. Listen, Mr. Lowercase Highbrow.
Shoot.
I'm afraid you've never been hungry.
Don't be afraid.
When Russia was interesting, Mr. Cummings got up and went there.
The year is 1931. The city is Paris. The place is the Soviet embassy.
The Red Fox leans toward me.
Why do you wish to go to Russia?
Because I've never been there.
You are interested in economic and sociological problems.
Net.
Perhaps you are aware that there has been a change of government in recent years.
Yes, I say without being able to suppress a smile.
And your sympathies are not with socialism?
May I be perfectly frank?
Please.
I know almost nothing about these important matters and care even less.
For what do you care?
My work.
Which is writing.
And painting.
What kind of writing?
Chiefly verse, some prose.
Then you wish to go to Russia as a writer and a painter. Is that correct?
I wish to go as myself.
Do you realize that to go as what you call yourself will cost a great deal?
I've been told so.
Let me earnestly warn you that such is the case. Visiting Russia as you intend would be futile from every point of view. The best way for you to go would be as a member of some organization.
But so far as I know, I am not a member of any organization.
In that case, you should go as a tourist.
I found there to be three peoples in Russia. The first consists in the tourists for whom everything is fixed up. The second is composed of sympathetic pilgrims from abroad. Naive bozos go roaring in there and see nude bathing carried on in complete modesty and think it is due to the system. It's not. It's just the character and temperament of the people. They are marvelous people.
Yet, on Saturday, May 30th, 1931, in the desolate city of Moscow,
I glimpse an apparently endless line of unimaginably uncouth figures.
each a tovarich or comrade, a soi-disant citizen of the subhuman superstate USSR,
Moving imperceptibly toward and disappearing into the tomb of their human god, Lenin, whose embalmed body lies somewhere within and below. I approach an officer of the non-law looming near the tomb's entrance and, mustering all my mendacity, tell him that I'm an American newspaper man, whereupon he salutingly shoves me in the very front of the line. As the line unmovingly moves, I enter the tomb. I descend. I view the human god, Lenin.
Under a prism-shaped transparency lying, tovarich to the waist, forcelessly shut right claw, left fin unshut, limply, and a small, not intense head, and a face without wrinkles, and a reddish beard.
Certainly it was not made of flesh.
Every comrade is a bit of quite unmitigated hate, traveling in a futile groove, God knows why, and so do I.
Because they are afraid to love. Russia, I felt then, was more deadly than war. When nationalists hate, they hate by merely killing and maiming human beings. When internationalists hate, they hate by categorying and pigeonholing human beings.
In
All those who got athlete's mouth jumping on and off bandwagons.
memoriam.
Simple people
people who don't exist,
prefer things which don't exist.
simple things.
You bomb me equals bad. I bomb you equals good. Simple people
Who, incidentally, run this so-called world,
know this.
They know everything.
Whereas complex people, people who feel something, are very, very ignorant and really don't know anything. Nothing, for simple knowing people, is more dangerous than ignorance.
Why?
Because to feel something is to be alive. War and peace are not dangerous or alive, far from it. Peace is the inefficiency of science. War is the science of inefficiency. Nothing measurable can be alive. Nothing which is not alive can be art. Nothing which cannot be art is true, and everything untrue doesn't matter a very good goddamn.
The whole trouble with you is that, like so many people who were brought up on religion, you can't bear the idea of anything doing away with it.
Can't bear the idea of any what doing away with which?
Of science doing away with religion.
I see. We're supposed to suppose that the new religion, science, does away with religion, the old religion. Talk.
How can you be so perverse? As if religion and science weren't direct opposites.
Right you are, Colonel. Every coin has two sides.
Can't you possibly be serious?
I'm afraid I'm being much too serious, comrade.
No, you're not. You're being extremely trivial and very childish and rather cheaply amusing. What you can't seem to realize is this. Religion imprisons the human mind, whereas science makes people free.
What I can seem to realize is that I'd just as soon be imprisoned in freedom as in a jail, if that's any help.
You simply won't be serious, will you?
For crying out loud, my dear Professor, do you seriously believe that a measurable universe made of electrons and light years is one electron more serious or one light year less imprisoning than an unmeasurable universe made of cherubim and seraphim? Are you, and I am being serious, really sold on the saleability of reality? I quote myself. I'd rather learn from one bird how to sing than teach 10,000 stars how not to dance.
Who knows if the moon's a balloon coming out of a keen city in the sky filled with pretty people?
And if you and I should get into it, if they should take me and take you into their balloon, why, then we'd go up higher with all the pretty people than houses and steeples and clouds.
To sailing away and away, sailing into a keen city which nobody's ever visited, where always it's spring and everyone's in love.
And flowers pick themselves.
Tell me, doesn't your painting interfere with your writing?
Quite the contrary. They love each other dearly.
They're very different.
Well, very. One is painting and one is writing.
But your poems are rather hard to understand, whereas your paintings are so easy.
Easy?
Of course. You paint flowers and girls and sunsets, things that everybody understands.
I never met him.
Who?
Everybody.
Did you ever hear of non-representational painting?
I am.
Pardon me?
I am a painter, and painting is non-representational.
Not all painting.
No, house painting is representational.
And what does a house painter represent?
$10 an hour.
Spring is like a perhaps hand which comes carefully out of nowhere, arranging a window into which people look while people stare, arranging and changing, placing carefully there a strange thing and a known thing here, and changing everything carefully. Spring is like a perhaps hand in a window, carefully to and fro moving new and old things, while people stare, carefully moving a perhaps fraction of flower here, placing an inch of air there, and without breaking anything.
I am someone who proudly and humbly affirms that love is the mystery of mysteries, and that nothing measurable matters a very good goddamn. That an artist, a man, a failure is no more whenfully accreting mechanism, but a givingly eternal complexity,
neither some soulless and heartless, ultra-predatory infra-animal, nor any ununderstandingly knowing and believing and thinking automaton, but a naturally and miraculously whole human being, a feelingly illimitable individual, whose only happiness is to transcend himself, whose every agony is to grow.
When serpents bargain for the right to squirm, and the sun strikes to gain a living wage,
When thorns regard their roses with alarm, and rainbows are insured against old age.
when every thrush may sing no new moon in if all screech owls have not okayed his voice,
And any wave signs on the dotted line, or else an ocean is compelled to close.
When the oak begs permission of the birch to make an acorn, valleys accuse their mountains of having altitude, and March denounces April as a saboteur.
Then we'll believe in that incredible, unanimal mankind. And not until.
More miracles are to come, folks.
With you, we leave a remembrance of miracles. They are by somebody who can love and who shall be continually reborn.
A human being.
nothing false, nothing difficult or easy or small or colossal.
Nothing ordinary or extraordinary. Nothing emptied or filled, real or unreal.
Nothing feeble and known or clumsy and guessed.
Never the murdered finalities of where, when, and yes, no. Impotent non-games of wrong right and right wrong. Never to gain or pause. Never to rest and never to have. Only to grow.
Always the beautiful answer who asks a more beautiful question.
Dying is fine, but death? Oh, baby, I wouldn't like death if death were good. For when, instead of stopping to think, you begin to feel of it, dying's miraculous. Why? Because dying is perfectly natural, perfectly, putting it mildly, lively. But death is strictly scientific and artificial and evil and legal.
We thank thee, God Almighty, for dying.
Forgive us, O life, the sin of death. You shall above all things be glad and young. For if you're young, whatever life you wear, it will become you. And if you are glad, whatever's living will yourself become.
Girl boys may nothing more than boy girls need. I can entirely her only love, whose any mystery makes every man's flesh put space on, and his mind take off time. That you should ever think, may God forbid, and in his mercy your true lover spare. For that way knowledge lies, the fetal grave called progress, and negation's dead undoom.
I'd rather learn from one bird how to sing than teach 10,000 stars how not to dance.
In I, by David Osman, the part of E. E. Cummings was played by Don Fellows. The other two voices were Yvonne Adelian and Kerry Shale. The music was by Ian Kendall, Stuart Allen, and John Lewis. The program was directed by Alec Reed. Edward Eston Cummings died on the 4th of September, 1962.
P.S. No poet is dead.